Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is Suspects and Spirits, and I'm your host, Taylor Seraphin. What up, ghost nerds? I hope you're all doing very, very well. I just ate some high chews, so I'm extra good. You guys like high chews? I love them. And did you know that they make a sherbet flavored high chew? And yes, I mean sherbet, and I will say that until I die. I'm well aware that that is apparently not the way that you say it. And I'm here to say, I don't care because who pronounces it sherbet? That's weird. Sherbet. It sounds like you got cut off. Like you're trying to say something. You're starting to say a word and then you just don't. Or like a frog. You're all sherbet. It's a bizarre word. I have pronounced it wrong my whole life and I won't stop now. I'm not auditioning for the Food Network, so it's fine. And I don't have a monocle. So I will be saying sherbet, not sherbet. But anyways, this haichu that is sherbet flavored, it tastes like you actually just took a bite of the ice cream. It's so good. My husband laughed at me when he saw my expression while I was eating it. Cause at first I was like, okay, it's probably gonna taste like cotton candy or like be too sweet. But no, it was like that scene in Willy Wonka when she's eating the 3-course dinner gum, Violet, and she gets to the dessert part and she's all, blueberry pie. That was me. But I was like, it tastes like sherbet. Like it actually tasted like sherbet. It was delightful. And I highly recommend High Chews. This is not an ad. No one pays me right now. I don't have ads, but I'm in the process. So sorry. Sorry to inform you. We're going to start having ads pretty soon. Um, you can always skip them. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I skip the ads, but every once in a while I'll hear an ad that I'm like, oh, that sounds actually really interesting. Like the Aura frames. I actually got my mom one for Christmas. I did. So, and I used a code from a different podcast that I listened to. So thanks for the discount. I appreciate it. But yeah, we will be having ads not like super soon, but once I get everything squared away, once I cross all my T's and dot my I's and all that shit, all that professional stuff, I will be putting an ad or two into the episodes. But anyways, the high chews, if you're a high chew fan, if you're like me and you are addicted, definitely go try those if you haven't yet. I had never seen them before. I always see like the tropical ones or the other like weird flavors that they have, and they're all really good. I don't really like the grape ones, but that's like the only flavor I don't really care for. All the other ones, phenomenal. And this one, I don't know what kind of sorcery that is, what kind of magic, but they're delicious. Like I will binge eat an entire bag. Clearly, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I'm definitely not trying to eat less candy, that's for sure. So we went back yesterday to work and I was telling one of my coworkers, well, a few of them, because we were in a meeting, but we weren't paying attention. And we were talking, teachers are the worst students, by the way. We were talking about just like things that we did over the break. And I was like, I ate everything. Like I ate everything in my house. And my husband put so much candy in my stocking because he knows I love food. And I have something called POTS. So, not great. I was swollen. I was so swollen. Like my hands were swollen, my feet were swollen. I felt pregnant. But I'm not. I was just pregnant with joy. It's all that fucking delicious candy. So I was telling my coworkers about that and they were like, "Oh my God, me too. I just like pigged out and I was a couch potato." I was like, "Hell yeah. That is the way to spend winter break as a teacher. Just do nothing. Do absolutely nothing." I did do a little bit of work, but like only because I have to. Otherwise I fall behind. And no one wants to fall behind because then you're playing catch up and then it's stressful. So anyways, that's Candy Corner with Taylor. Today was the first day back at work after break and my alarm went off at 4. Guys, I was not having it. I slept in until 4:30. Really, just living life on the edge. But it was a good day back. No one threw anything. No one cried, including me. So really just a win all around. But now I'm here talking to you guys. So hey, guess what? I have a story for you today. I know, shocking. And today's episode actually isn't going to be too long. This is going to be like a fun-sized episode, like those tiny little Snickers. But I actually thought about doing this topic a while ago and never got around to it. So today I'm doing it. And as you all know, if you know me personally or you have been listening since the first episode, I'm from Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona and I love my alma mater. I do. I am a wildcat through and through. I loved my time on campus and I loved the dorm that I lived in, which brings me to why I decided on this topic. And we all know about haunted hotels, haunted hospitals, haunted houses, haunted schools. But colleges fall into that category as well. And the U of A is definitely not lacking in the haunting department. So I'm here to tell you all about the hauntings at the U of A campus. And if you went there and you didn't know it was haunted, congratulations. Now you do. So let's get started with a little backstory about the university. The University of Arizona officially opened its doors in 1891, making it one of the oldest institutions in the state. And at the time, Tucson was still a really rough desert town. It was, shaped by mining and railroads and the lingering tension of the Old West. And the university was founded as a territorial school long before Arizona actually became a state. And its earliest buildings rose out of land that had already seen generations upon generations of human presence. There were indigenous communities, Spanish influence, frontier violence, and just rapid expansion. Historians have often pointed out that places where emotional intensity runs high, ambition, grief, pride, tragedy, all of that, tend to accumulate what some believe is residual energy, which I've talked about before. You guys aren't new here, but if you are new here, hi, I'm Taylor. Welcome. Campuses, especially old ones like the U of A, are very unique in that way. They're spaces of constant transition. People arrive very hopeful and they leave completely changed. And sometimes they experience their most defining moments within those walls. And unfortunately, some of those moments can be traumatic, whether it is failing an exam, fighting with a roommate, or an unfortunate death. We can all pretty much agree that college campuses are rife with energy. Some paranormal researchers theorize that emotional imprints can linger, replaying themselves long after people involved are gone. And if that theory holds any weight at all, then the University of Arizona may be carrying more than just academic history. Because once the sun goes down and the campus gets quiet, some of those buildings don't seem as empty as they should be. Now, before we talk about the actual hauntings, we need to talk about what is known. And one of the things that is known is a very, very tragic story. And I want to be very clear that I am not trying to sensationalize. I am not trying to make this just a ghost story. Okay. This was somebody's life that was unfortunately taken at the University of Arizona. And the story is very, very tragic. I'm just going to give you kind of like the Cliff's Notes version because I may end up doing a full episode on it eventually. But that being said, there is one residence hall at the U of A that holds a lot more energy than some of the others. And that is because in September of 2007, a University of Arizona student by the name of Mia Henderson was killed inside of her dorm room at Graham Greenlee Residence Hall. She was only 18 years old, and the crime completely shocked the campus and the Tucson community, not only because it happened in a place that's meant to be safe, but because it happened behind a closed dorm room door, somewhere that students are meant to just sleep and study and try to feel at home and maybe, make some questionable decisions. But this was beyond any of that. Mia was a member of the Navajo Nation, and she was living in the, please forgive me if I mispronounce this, O'odham Key Living Learning Community. This was a cultural space within Graham Greenlee meant to foster connection and belonging among Native American students. When people talk about Graham Greenlee being haunted, they're not really talking about Mia as a ghost story or even as a spectacle, because her death was not entertainment. It was very traumatic. And like I stated before, sometimes buildings can hold on to trauma. What people are reacting to when they hear this story or when they feel the energy in Graham Greenlee, whether they realize it or not, is what happens in a space when it absorbs something that heavy. Now, whether you believe in that theory, literally or metaphorically, it's not really hard to understand why a dorm tied to a sudden violent death might feel different afterwards, especially in this situation. Because for Mia, it wasn't like a stranger who broke in, it was her roommate who killed her. She stabbed her to death. So this poor girl, this 18-year-old, lost her life in one of the most traumatic ways. And I can only imagine what that kind of trauma has done to the energy in that building. Now, I personally have been inside of Graham Greenlee. I had friends who lived in that hall. I was there often, and I did not like the energy in there from day one. And I didn't even know about what happened there. I didn't know what happened there until my junior year when I wasn't even living on campus anymore. I was living in a house with my friend Ariel. I had no idea about what had transpired in that residence hall until later. And then it all kind of made sense. I cannot express to you the heaviness I felt walking in there. It's almost like you can't catch your breath, like you can't breathe. You walk in, and it's much smaller than a lot of the other dorms. So that already makes it feel really claustrophobic, and it's very dimly lit. It feels different. It definitely feels different than the other dorm rooms. I really can't explain it. And I had friends who said that they never felt like weird inside of Graham Greenlee. And then there was me who was like, I'll wait outside. I used to get headaches in there. I went and visited a friend in that dorm who had just transferred like middle of freshman year. And I remember sitting on the floor in her dorm room and like trying to get to know her roommate, just making her feel a little more comfortable. And I remember feeling so dizzy and not really knowing why. And then I left there and I felt fine. I thought that maybe I was just like, stressed or I don't know, whatever. But the energy there is definitely different. Some residents have reported that the hallways felt unnaturally quiet, like especially late at night, even by dorm standards. Others have said that they felt uneasy for no obvious reason, like that sense of being watched or the feeling that you weren't entirely alone, even when your room was empty. A few students have shared stories of hearing unexplained noises too, like very soft footsteps in the hallway when no one was there, or doors kind of clicking as if someone were testing the handles. Not like slamming them, not aggressive at all, just subtle enough to make you pause and listen. Others have described waking up suddenly in the middle of the night with a very tight feeling in their chest. The kind of like anxious feeling that doesn't come with a clear thought or anything attached to it, just an instinctive sense that something is off, which is often what I felt there. I had that same feeling. Like I said, I would get headaches. I would feel dizzy. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I was like, maybe there's asbestos. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's an old hall. It's a very old residence hall. So I chalked it up to like, the air sucks in here. But after learning about what happened there, I was like, that could actually explain quite a bit. But honestly, that's nothing because there are reports tied specifically to the end of the Oodom Kai key. Sorry, guys. If I'm saying that wrong and I'm offending anybody, I really do apologize. I'm not trying to be flippant about it. I looked up how to say it, and there were like three different pronunciations. So if I'm saying it wrong, please just let me know. Be nice about it. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But there are reports tied specifically to the end of that hallway where Mia lived and where she was unfortunately killed, near the community's shared lounge. And this was a place many residents described as kind of like sacred and quiet, just kind of that way by design. But former residents have said, and they swear, that late at night, they can see the vague figure of a young woman standing at the far end of the hallway just outside the lounge. She doesn't move. She doesn't approach you or do anything scary. She just kind of stands there looking down the corridor, which I guess is kind of scary in itself. But the details of her would fade away when she was approached, almost like looking through a fog. So this figure would just vanish. And no one ever claimed that the figure spoke or moved toward them. It wasn't frightening in like a jump scare sense, more like a memory reaching out of the quiet spaces where students live and breathe every day. There were a couple of people who said, including some of my friends who lived there, who said that she looked very real, but almost like the end of the hall was hazy. And anytime they approached, she would just kind of like drift or vanish. One friend said that she walked the other way. The figure did, not the friend. And I find that to be very sad. Not just unsettling, but sad. If this girl's spirit is stuck there residually, I think that's terrible. And I hope that one day she can cross over and go where she belongs. If any of you guys listening have experienced something in Graham Greenlee, I would love to hear about it. I know I have some friends who've gone to the U of A who are listening. Honestly, it doesn't even have to be Graham Greenlee. You can write to me about any college spooky experience, a haunted area of your school, doesn't have to be a dorm. I do know that there are some haunted universities, haunted colleges. So if you've experienced anything, please write it into me. But don't worry, we're not done. Because here's the thing, as sad as that story is, that is usually what leads to hauntings is traumatic events, murders, people dying unexpectedly, or even just people, passing in their sleep who weren't able to move on. That is what causes paranormal activity to happen. What gets me about that hall in particular, Graham Greenlee, is that it wasn't just that it was spooky. Students who said that it was, remember when I just mentioned that they said it's like abnormally quiet? If you've ever been in a college dorm, you know that shit's not quiet. Okay? Not quiet at all. College dorms are noisy. All right? You don't get a whole lot of sleep if you have some rowdy neighbors. I lived in the stadium dorm, and it is literally the dorm inside of the football stadium. It was so cool. Such an amazing experience. I loved living in there. Did it get loud? Yes, it got loud. But usually I was at the football games. And if I didn't, for whatever reason, if I was like sick or I had a final to study for, I could put in some earplugs and be fine. Like it didn't bother me. Just the other noises in a dorm are loud. Like girls, we're squealy, we're loud. Drunk girls, especially drunk boys. I mean, things get rowdy in a dorm room. And I will say that I believe the stadium dorm is also haunted. I could not find any kind of verified information about the dorm in particular to prove this, but a lot of us who lived in it felt like there was something weird about it. For example, there was an entire section of the floor that was completely sealed off. Like I'm talking a very thick metal door with giant deadbolts on it that used to have dorm rooms behind it. And our RA, she told us some lore about it. She said that there are many different stories, one of which being that there was allegedly a suicide that took place in that section. And after getting everything cleaned up, they decided to block it off. I don't know if any of this is verified. I wasn't able to find anything, but I did find it very odd that an entire section of the dorm was completely blocked off. And there was one day when it was pouring rain. It was a monsoon. The power went out in the dorm, so none of us could do anything. Classes were canceled. We all just kind of had to stay put. There was literal rivers of water running through the streets of Tucson. And we decided we were going to go check it out. It was like a few girls from my hallway and then some boys from the hallway above us. And we were like, let's go see if we can get into this section of the dorm. When we got to that section of the hallway, we were able to open one door that then led us to the giant metal door. It does not lead to like scaffolding. It doesn't lead to the outside. It doesn't lead to any kind of like maintenance area. We've never seen any maintenance people coming in and out of there. So we tried to get it open and did not succeed because it's a giant metal door with deadbolts on it. But it was a very fun experience. We found it. We even asked like some of the other residents who lived in that particular hallway. We're like, do you ever see any maintenance people like coming through here? Is this like a maintenance door? And they were like, no, we've never seen anybody. We asked the other RA if that was a maintenance store. And she was like, no, that's not a maintenance store. I have no idea what that is. No one knows what's behind it. What we do know is that it doesn't lead to outside. It literally is just right next to one of the doors of a dorm room. And none of the other floors have a door like that. We once asked a maintenance guy who came to work on like an AC unit or something. We were just curious. We were like, hey, what's up with that weird door? Like, do you guys use that for something? And he was like, I didn't realize it was a real thing. I've never seen it, but apparently there's some kind of like haunted hallway in the stadium dorm, and there's a door that, should never be opened. So clearly we were like, sir, tell us more, please. And he went on to just tell us a little bit about stories he had heard. And it was very similar to what our RA told us, which was the suicide story. Do we know if that's factual? No, can't find fuck shit about that. But I can tell you that being in that hallway, staring at that door is very eerie. And the girls who lived in that hall told us that they heard very strange sounds coming from behind the door, but no one ever knew what was behind it. I still don't know to this day. So if anyone happens to know what's behind that weird ass door, please write in and let me know. Now you may be saying, okay, haunted dorms. Is there anything else? Guys, of course there is. I wouldn't just hop on here and tell you about 2 dorms and then be like, okay, bye. There are definitely some other places at the U of A that are actually known to be haunted. And these are verified. One of these places being Old Main, the heart of the campus. Old Main is the oldest building on campus. It was constructed in 1891 when it opened, and it is often described as the symbolic heart of the University of Arizona. With its thick brick walls, its narrow hallways, and creaking staircases, it is a beautiful building. It is very gorgeous. And according to decades of campus lore, it is also the most haunted building at the U of A, because the most infamous legend tied to Old Main centers around a man named Carlos Maldonado. He was a construction foreman who reportedly died during the building's construction in the 1880s. According to legend, Maldonado was found with his throat cut, and no one knows exactly what happened. Details surrounding his death remain pretty murky and largely rooted in oral history rather than actual records. But what has endured, however, are the stories of what came after. Students, maintenance workers, contractors, anyone who has visited Old Main over the years have reported seeing a shadowy figure moving through the hallways, often described as a dark silhouette that disappears when approached. Others talk about an overwhelming sensation of being watched, especially in the quieter parts of the building. Some describe cold spots or just an oppressive heaviness inside of Old Main. Now, paranormal researchers, as we said before, they note that older buildings, such as Old Main, especially those tied to violent or sudden deaths, become focal points for haunting legends because they serve as anchors for memory. Old Main isn't just old, it's foundational. Every class, every student, every person that has passed through this building, every administrator who worked there, every renovation layered new experiences onto its bones. If any building were to hold echoes of the past, it would absolutely be this one. So that is rumored to be the most haunted and active building at the U of A. Have I ever had an experience at Old Main? No, but I also was very rarely in that building. That's for a lot of administrative stuff. I think I was in there maybe twice ever. So no, I've never experienced anything at Old Main, but I would love to go check it out with their permission. Next up, we have Maricopa Hall, a dorm of sorrow. Maricopa Hall is one of the university's historic residence halls, and like many older dormitories across the country, it has developed a reputation that extends far beyond late night study sessions. One of the most persistent legends tied to Maricopa Hall involves the sound of a woman crying late at night. And no, I don't mean a college girl crying about her boyfriend for the 10th time in a row, and all of her friends are saying, just break up with him. He's a douche. And she's like, but I love him. Not that kind of crying. Students over the years have reported hearing sobbing in the hallways or the rooms that should be empty, often without being able to locate the actual source of the sound. Some versions of the story link this to a tragic suicide, again, during the building's construction. Though, like many campus legends, documentation is sparse and details vary depending on who's telling the story. Another layer of the haunting that I think is fascinating connects the building to Tucson's pre university past. Before the campus existed, parts of the land were associated with saloons and dance halls because this is the Wild West, you know? According to legend, violent altercations involving dance hall workers may have left emotional scars that still echo in the space. Whether symbolic or literal, that recurring theme is grief. It is unresolved, it is repetitive, and it is deeply emotional. Unlike more dramatic apparitions, Maricopa Hall's haunting is often described as felt rather than seen. It's the sound of crying, of sobbing, a sense of heaviness, the feeling that sorrow itself has been locked into the walls. Have I been to Maricopa Hall? Yes, I have. And I can confirm that is also a very eerie feeling dorm room. And I'm not saying that dorm rooms are like warm and cozy. I know. Okay, I know dorm rooms have like a specific feel to them. This is not the feel I'm talking about. Okay, I want to be really clear. I've been into other dorm rooms. I have two older sisters who went to college. I've visited them at their colleges. I've spent the night in their rooms. I've been to other dorms at the U of A that felt completely normal. Maricopa and Graham Greenlee at the U of A have some very heavy energy. That's all I'm going to say. Next up on our list at the University of Arizona is Centennial Hall, where the show never ends. Centennial Hall serves as one of the university's primary performance venues. It hosts concerts, lectures, theatrical productions, all the fun stuff, including my favorite psych class that I took with Dr. Allen. What up, Dr. A? Hope you're doing well. He was the coolest professor, and that class was my favorite. It was so fascinating. But when the audience leaves Centennial Hall and the lights dim, some say that the building does not fall silent at all. According to campus legend, Centennial Hall is haunted by two spirits, one male and one female. The female spirit is said to be a lot more aggressive, with stories claiming that she has pushed people on staircases. The male spirit, by contrast, is often described as much calmer, almost like a watchful spirit rather than anything threatening. Now, the people that I rely on for these kinds of stories are those who work on the productions at Centennial Hall because that is where we host our Broadway in Tucson. That is where a lot of the plays take place, and I go to as many as I possibly can. They're phenomenal. I love to rely on the crew members who work the sets, and specifically those who work backstage. Crew members and performers working late hours have reported hearing muffled voices, unexplained footsteps, and even phantom classical music that echoes through the empty theater. Seasoned paranormal investigators who have gone to a lot of theaters point out that theaters tend to be especially prone to hauntings due to their acoustics and emotional intensity. Performances involve heightened emotion, repetition, and very strong energy from the performers. So the conditions, some believe, are ideal for residual hauntings, which I never thought about before. I didn't think about how reenacting something on a stage and all of that emotion and the music and all of that could kind of like keep the energy there. So whether it's psychological or paranormal, Centennial Hall's legends continue to thrive among those who spend time backstage after dark. One of my friends, whose family actually worked there quite often for Broadway in Tucson and other plays not associated, definitely had some spooky stories. As far as that female spirit, yeah, she's spicy. You don't want to piss her off. My friends, I don't know if they want me to name them, so I'm not going to. But when they were working backstage, one of them was up on the catwalk, and I forget what she said she was doing, something techie. I don't know. And she felt someone shove her, and she almost fell forward on the catwalk. And when she looked behind her, she thought it was like one of her crewmates kind of messing with her. And she was like, "Oh my God, what are you fucking doing? Like, don't do that. So dangerous." And no one was there. But she said she physically felt hands on her back and shove her up on the catwalk, that would terrify me. That is not good. But then I had my other friend who he worked on sets and he would put them together. He said that his paintbrush was always in a different spot, almost like something or someone was messing with him. And there's one day in particular where he kind of did a test where he put his paintbrush inside the can and he walked away for a moment just to see if it would move. And he said he was only gone for like a minute and he came back and his paintbrush was on the floor and there was paint on the stage. So he was like, "Who is moving my paintbrush?" And he didn't know about the spirits at all. He said he had no idea about any of the hauntings or anything. No one had told him. It was like his first year working there. And he told one of his crewmates, he was like, "Hey, who keeps moving my paintbrush? Like, what is going on?" He thought someone was messing with him. And they were like, "Oh, that's just the ghost." And he was like, "I'm sorry, come again? What? What do you mean just the ghost?" And they told him about the two spirits that haunt Centennial Hall. And he's pretty much convinced that it was the male spirit, not the female spirit, because the female spirit does shit like pushing you on the catwalk or pushing you down the stairs. So Centennial Hall and Old Main kind of going neck and neck for the most active hauntings at the U of A. Now, the next story that I would like to share with you all is pretty widely known. It's about the Bear Down Gym. In the fall of 1926, John Bird Salmon, aka Button, was the newly installed student body president at the U of A. He was also a varsity quarterback and a catcher for the baseball team, and just generally a popular campus figure and well liked. However, in early October, after the Wildcat varsity defeated the freshman squad in an annual match, Salmon and several friends were returning from a visit to Phoenix when a car crash just north of Tucson near Florence left the young athlete critically injured. Salmon, who was only 22 at the time, unfortunately ended up dying due to his injuries the morning of October 18th. Now, the coach at the time, J.F. McHale, who the team referred to as Pop, he had visited Salmon in the hospital regularly before his death, and later told the squad that the young athlete's last message to his teammates was, quote, "Tell them, tell the team to bear down," end quote. And that's where the name of the gym, the school song, and the rallying cry, "Bear Down, Arizona," comes from, which is a very touching story and one that has also led to the reported hauntings in the gym. Because the spirit most often associated with the gym is John, aka Button Salmon. Many coaches and players have reported seeing Button around campus or just hanging out at the gym. According to legend, Salmon's devotion to the university was so strong that he never truly left. Late night staff and students have reported seeing a figure in a vintage jersey wandering around the gym. Unlike many hauntings rooted in fear, this one is often described as comforting, a reminder of enduring school pride and unfinished youth. In paranormal folklore, spirits tied to identity and belonging are often seen as guardians rather than threats. So if John, aka Button, does still walk the halls of Bear Down Gym, some believe that he's simply just watching over the place that he loves the most, which I think is really, really sweet. I tell everybody all the time, not all ghosts are scary. And I definitely think that Button is like a guardian of the gym. Now, this last and final haunting that we are going to talk about at the University of Arizona is the Modern Language Building. The Modern Language Building carries one of the most classic ghost legends on campus, the Woman in White. According to local lore, a pale figure dressed in white has been seen peering into classrooms or wandering hallways. Some versions of the story claim that human remains were actually discovered during construction, a tale that has circulated widely in ghost hunting communities, though official confirmation is unclear. The image of a woman in white is one of the oldest tropes in ghost lore, often symbolizing unresolved loss or betrayal. Whether the legend originated from a real discovery or grew through repetition, it remains one of the most enduring and eerie stories tied to the university. One of my professors, actually, at the Modern Language Building, is the one who told me about this story. According to him, the remains were confirmed to be human, but because they were so old, I guess the police were like, "Well, we don't know what to do with them. So I guess they just took them. But no one knows what came of them. It's a mystery. But I've definitely heard about the woman in white haunting that building. That was one of the first stories I ever heard stepping foot onto that campus. I found out about Graham Greenlee years after I heard about this one. So who knows? Maybe it's just a legend. Maybe it's real. I never witnessed anything, but that doesn't mean others didn't. Now, there is one other place at the University of Arizona that is said to be haunted, but I couldn't find a whole lot of information about it. It is the student union. Apparently, custodial workers and people who work like night shifts say that they get the feeling of being watched. Sometimes they can feel like a hand on them in the union when cleaning at night, or they hear footsteps in some parts of the building where they're completely alone. Now, I couldn't find as much information on that one, but it was listed, so I wanted to include it. But beyond individual buildings, longtime students and staff describe just a general atmosphere that settles over campus at night, and I can confirm that. Footsteps echo where no one walks, doors close on their own, sounds travel way too far. And whether these experiences are the result of, memory, architecture, psychology, or something beyond explanation, the stories love to circulate. And as long as people continue to live, learn, and experience intense moments within these walls, the University of Arizona's ghost stories are not likely to fade anytime soon. Well, you guys, that's it. That's all I have for you today. I know it's not my typical deep dive that I normally do with a whole backstory, and a build up, but I thought it was an interesting topic of conversation, and you might want to hear my perspective on it as well, because I lived there and I went to school there. If any of you guys have spooky experiences from the U of A or just any college campus, any school, send it in for the next episode of Booze Clues, and I will do my best to include it. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night, your day, snuggling your dog, watching true crime documentaries, whatever it may be. Be good humans, and remember to trust your lizard brain. Until next time, goodbye.